morning. You're listening to Robert Ficano here. Welcome to 910 AM, the Superstation. You can join us at 313-778-7600. We got a studio full here this morning. We have Adam Hollier, who was the successful candidate for Senate in the city of Detroit, State Senate. We don't want to move him up to the U.S. Senate yet. That was successful and was at the state convention. I stopped by there yesterday, so we'll have a few thoughts and comments on that. Police Commissioner Willie Burton is with us, and our libertarian, joins us every once in a while, Scotty Boman. Welcome, gentlemen. And you can join us at 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. Adam, let's start with you about... I know you were at the convention yesterday. Congratulations on your successful run for the state senate. So what do you anticipate is going to happen here? Yesterday was mostly the university boards that were the nomination. Labor and the MEA were pretty strident in who they wanted yesterday, and we were talking off the air a little bit that Labor probably from the April convention realized, the pre-nomination convention in Detroit, realized that they had to come out in force. And they were there yesterday, definitely pushing. I think there's a sense of anticipation, hostility towards President Trump, and they keep talking about the blue wave that they think is going to eventually evolve. But one of the issues that came up, that one of the reactions of Labor being there probably so strong, was the Attorney General candidate for the Michigan Democratic Party, Dana Nessel, who had come out and brought a number of new people in the April convention. For those that are not as familiar, the Democrats do it a little bit different. They have a pre-nomination that, in essence, locks in who the candidates are so they can raise money and campaign and stuff earlier than just waiting till August, like what the Republicans have actually done. They've just named and nominated their candidates. And there is an issue whether those were one-time shots that came to the convention that supported Dana and got her nominated, or is this going to be something that they're permanently going to be engaged in? So, any of your thoughts on this? Sure. Nominated today.
So maybe yesterday was going to be so Labor decided.
Yeah, there was actually contested seats that was going on. I think all their candidates did win. Yeah, it was nominated. Yeah, my grandfather came out of the UAW. It was at the Battle of the Overpass. There was a lot of background. You're absolutely right.
And so yesterday you saw those same folks pulling out their sling cards and saying, "Hey, this is who I'm voting." I mean, the speeches were great, and I was really proud and glad to be able to nominate Brian Barton to receive the nomination for the state board of governors. So we'll be able to think of it. Yesterday, I think it was about the party and labor still matters. We're going to see here rain or shine, and we're going to step up, and we're going to see that ball. Because yesterday we got all kinds of talk, Russian talk, and the video was cool. I mean, NBA caucus, UNW caucus, these are people who are saying, we've always been a part of the party, and we're going to stay a part.
That's the sense that I got, that labor came roaring back after the April situation. And, yeah, and like everything else, the progressives, Democrats have always been a big tent. So the progressives coming in, they're welcome, they want their energy, what they're going to do. I know that Willie was a former organizer for Bernie, you know, and what he did in pulling the upset. But it's something that's evident that people have a sense that there's going to be a blue, we'll call it the blue wave. There's going to be a Democrats going to be elected.
Is what we're looking for.
Yeah, for it to happen. We already got a caller here. John, you're on with our panel here.
Hey, panel, how you doing? Good morning.
Great, John. How you doing?
Hello. All right, here's my thing about labor. I think labor unions, they all need to stick in their own lane. What does the MEA have to do with anything about the truck drivers union? It's a thing. When you say labor, it's a broad brush. One thing about the MEA, it's all taxpayer supported. We're paying for our schools and everything. They have nothing to do with building a car in Detroit. And the labor leaders of all these positions, whatever they're using, whatever the heck they're doing, they're all taking money in. The leadership doesn't care about the people that they're supposed to be supporting. That's what I see. They should worry about, I say, stick to your own lane, take care of your people. Not all labor unions have the same outcome. It's all individuals. Oh, shoot. I can't think of the word.
John, historically, I think what the point you're missing is that historically...
Agendas, Bob, agendas.
Okay, but historically, yeah, the same agenda. Historically, for example, for a number of years, if the UAW achieved a certain rate per hour, health care benefits, those kind of things, it opened up the paths for the other organized labor to be able to achieve this with their employers as well. So they are all interconnected in the way that they look at things.
Bob, exactly. I'll tell you, when I was in the Army, and we were doing the drawdown over in the 80s, the 90s, during the Clinton years, we had to use to turn in a piece of equipment to inspect a truck or whatever. We had to use the standard labor wage rate, and that was based off of the UAW.
Yeah, I mean, so that you were interconnected. So the Teamsters were worried about what the UAW was getting, and vice versa. The teachers, let's face it, the teachers are as much as what Engler and those in the past that wanted to beat the hell out of the teachers. They are the most valuable asset they have because you're teaching the most valuable asset of the community. Go ahead.
Hey, Bob, a good teacher is worth a weight in gold. But the problem with the MEA and the teachers union is you can't get rid of the bad ones.
Hey, John, let me just step in here. I think we've got to get out of the business of spending all our time talking about bad teachers and labor. We have to spend the money to educate folks, to get good teachers in. But the MEA, the AFT, all those folks, most of the things on the ballot yesterday were around schools. So we did the State Board of Education. We did the Wayne State Board of Governors. We did the Michigan U of M Regents. We did MSU trustees. Yesterday was about education. The teachers union should have been involved. They should have been engaged. They need to be engaged. And I know you more than anybody else want to see bad teachers out of schools. Most teachers want to see bad teachers out of schools because they make them look bad. Nobody wants to see good teachers, and unions don't want to protect them.
You know what we need to have? We really need to have in America. We're no longer a farming country. We need to have year-round schooling. We need to keep these kids in school. Take 2 weeks off in the middle, 2 weeks off there. We need year-round schooling because we're getting beat up on education.
Yeah, well, two things, John. Number one, year-round, if you really look the way they work, is that not that they go year-round and take 2 weeks off. They have larger chunks of time off around certain things like in December and certain areas like that. So, I mean, the equivalent of the same amount of time sometimes equates to them taking the summer off, which is, how do you do it one way or another? The other thing to understand about our education system versus the rest of the world, we take everybody. No matter where you live, our education system takes you in. These other countries, there's an elitist, you go up through a chain and you're eliminated. You have no chance. You will not go to college if the powers to be say that you're not on that track. We're reversed of that.
I was stationed. I was in the military 23 years, and my boys they went to school in DO Department of Defense schools. They went to schools in Germany. They went to schools in Italy. And the thing about them over there is they said, you're teaching American kids. You got to give them the best education system that we can give them. And if we don't give it to them, then you can go back to public schools. And my boys came back here to the States. We came from Italy. Honor roll, dean's list in schools. It's not throwing more money in education. We need to make sure our kids are educated. That's why I go to get around school. And that's it. The money's the thing with education. And let's go unions. Oh, I can really go on about this because I've seen what happened with education.
Okay, but don't forget our model includes everybody getting into the system. In China, by the time they're 8th or 9th grade, they are tracking you where you're going to go. And if you're not up to what they start by process elimination. If you're not on the college-bound track that they choose that you're going to be on, you don't have a chance to do it. Our model isn't like that.
Mr. Ficano, in our day, we're about the same age. We used to call it flunk. You remember that? You didn't let them know.
Yeah, they would flunk. They would flunk.
That's where we need to go. We need to go back to that. Spare the rod, spoil the child, Bob. That's it.
Okay.
We got to go back to that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks for calling in. I think sometimes, though, we do forget that our model that we have here in education, and we see that the superintendent of, I saw the superintendent of Detroit Public Schools, he still has a problem trying to recruit teachers. He can't.
We don't pay him enough. I mean, we're talking about the worst of the worst jobs where you're getting paid almost nothing these days. I mean, we don't do a good job taking care of the people who take care of us. Firefighters, police officers, teachers, bus drivers. The people who do the hard work aren't getting paid for it, and they can't raise families the way that they used to. I mean, my dad was a Detroit firefighter. It gave him the opportunity to raise 4 kids. You can't do that today. You look at teachers. You can't raise a family as a teacher. That's why all my friends who started out as teachers are going and doing other things. It's not okay. And everybody wants to blame teachers or say, hey, I remember this bad teacher I had. And everybody can remember. But you also remember the bad receptionist you had, the bad doctor, the bad bus driver. We have bad folks in every profession. But we don't blame them.
Well, the demonizing of teachers really started with John Engler. I mean, he took on, in his election, took on the MEA and said that they were bad and having to go after them. It's kind of interesting. Teachers almost have the same syndrome sometimes as Congress people. Everybody likes their congressperson or they like their teacher that's teaching their kids, but they don't like they've been brainwashed about that the rest of everybody else is bad in it. But mine is good because I like what they're doing with my kid, or this congressperson seems to be fighting for me and things like that, versus the rest, the rest are bad, and we sort of bought into that model a little bit.
That's why we got to push back on it. Every time we get a chance, we should be pushing back and saying, teachers are the lifeblood. They're the ones who make the biggest difference, and we need to be doing everything we can to recruit them. It's like cops.
It's interesting because, we know that teachers are not being paid nearly enough for the work that they do. And, a teacher, a new teacher, with a family of 3 or 4 are eligible for food assistance. And we got to fix that problem.
Which puts us into an interesting question. A lot of the development that goes on in the tax credits, they pull from the education taxes. If I'm going to put in a building and you get the tax credits, part of the sacrifice is the taxes are in education. So you got this dilemma sometimes. We're saying to everybody, we got to pay them more, we got to create more revenue for them and stuff like that. Yet the way we develop and stuff actually takes some of that away.
The challenge with those is if you use the tools right, they still result in a net increase, because a lot of those changes are you're taking away future dollars that could go to schools, but you're still holding them harmless. The reality is that all those economic development tools are tools. So if you're using them right, they work. The problem is we haven't been using them right.
Okay, we got a lot of callers here that are lining up on this. let's go with Gim. Gim, you're on with Bob Ficano and with the panel here. Gim?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Yeah, I think that there's the structure of the education system kind of backwards. I mean, how many school districts are there in the state of Michigan? I think there's over 500. You know,
There's a lot. Yeah, I don't know how many there are.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the curriculums are mandated by the state and federal government, right?
Yeah, they mandate some
Pretty
of it.
much. Yeah, I think all of it, except they can have like electives and stuff by the districts. But I mean, why can't there just be a north, south, east, west, and central board that governs all the districts, and then the money's distributed by pupils? You know, I don't understand why you have this.
Well, in theory, they're distributed. In theory, they're distributed by pupil now from the state.
No, but honestly, you're not wrong. So a number of states, like in the South, like Kentucky, Louisville, they have countywide schools.
Florida,
Yep,
Florida's countywide.
And you look at those communities, they have a less income disparity. They have less issues with, differences in schools. And I think the ISDs could do a good role of doing that. Right now,
That's the intermediate school district.
Thank you. But I mean, you have communities like River Rouge that are competing against Detroit. You know, actively out door knocking, recruiting Detroiters. I mean, that's the problem. We're spending too much money not on educating kids and trying to track them or steal them.
They have a lot of duplications of services, like in the Highland Township District, here in Valley School District. The district spent, this was, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, they had $100 million millage. $70 million went to build field houses and sports centers. The other money was gone towards education. And the bad thing about that is that now they built these facilities, and they sell gym memberships to residents and outsiders, you know. So here they are, they're getting away from their mission, and they spent all this money, and it's been a drain on the district for years. They did 2 high schools. And, you know, here you're bringing outsiders in the school, you know what I mean? Like, one minute, you know, everybody's afraid that these gunners are going to come into the schools, or bad people, whatever, pedophiles or whatever. You're inviting them, you know, into your school to go use the sports facility. You know, there's students in there, and granted that the center is closed from 12 to 4, but in the morning it's open, and in the evening it's open. So I just think that, you know, there just has to be more responsibility on first off, the residents, and the way they structure this whole thing. They wasted billions of dollars on this duplication of services, and sometimes I think privatization may be better, you know. Maybe get the government out of it.
It's hard. They're always looking for additional ways, trying to bring revenue in, and that's the issue. If they can bring it in, like for example, these gym memberships. I'm not sure how that works, but I know there's communities that build gyms, and they'll take outside residents, and it's a higher price, but they'll let them come in, with the gym membership. But then the question is, are they competing with like the Planet Fitnesses of the world?
Well, that too.
When they're doing that. And they got the government bonds to back them. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But the problem with that is that we say we're all about educating. We got to find these new standards for the kid. We got to do all these things for the kid. But you're taking time away from your mission, your specific mission, to go do this other thing. And when there are problems with it, you have to take some of your attention to that. And like I said before, you're inviting people outside. It's been a drain on the district. They've had trouble trying to fund this thing to keep it going. And I just think that, I think that sometimes these school districts and these schools or whatnot are just ego fests for a lot of these people, that look what I did. It should have never even been tabled to the residents whatsoever. It should have just been specifically to those. That's all I got.
Okay, thanks, Jim. We're going to go to break. So John, Byron, Chuck, hang on. We're going to get to you right after the break.
This This is Gene Zamler for 1-800-Lawyers, the Michigan law firm representing individuals injured in automobile accidents. If you have been injured in an automobile accident, you need to call 1-800-Lawyers. Auto accidents are serious. Lost wages, loss of your career, or worse. Our firm has won millions of dollars for people all across Michigan who have been injured in automobile accidents. Our attorneys are aggressive and won't back down to the insurance companies. To get the money you deserve, call 1-800-Lawyers.
Every weeknight at 9 p.m. is something new and something fresh.
This is Todd Corser, and I want you to check out my show. Listen in and call every week as we explore government and hot topics. Tune in, raw and uncut.
This is attorney Michael Schwartz at 9:10 AM Superstation, and you can hear me every Tuesday night starting at 9 p.m.
Hello, Detroit. This is attorney Crystal Crittenden, and please tune in to my new show, The Truth Matters, on 9:10 AM Superstation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlene Mitchell, your host of Mind Your Business. Listen to my show live every Thursday from 9 to 11 p.m.
I'm Reverend Maya Lisa Reynolds, inviting you to listen to Mama Maya Speaks Friday evenings from 9 until 11 p.m., discussing education, motivation, and inspiration on Superstation 910 AM.
Different names, different voices, but the same energy. 910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio.
For now, we got with us Chad Livingwood, Crane's Detroit Business. Chad, what are you writing about this week in Crane's Detroit Business?
Well, following Thursday's announcement by the Canadian government and the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority on the companies that are going to build the Gordie Howe International Bridge, a consortium of primarily Canadian companies that are going to build this new bridge from Delray to the south side of Windsor, I found up a little analysis about how the Canadians are forging ahead on this project at a time of tenuous relations between Canada and U.S. right now on trade. That the trade that is the justification for building this bridge to try to increase the flow. Yeah, and the Canadians are doing this out of their pocket, and at the same time, our president is threatening a trade war with our closest ally. Donald Trump has one card he could play in this. He could hold up construction of this bridge.
910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio. Sundays on 910 AM Superstation is a collection of personalities like none other. Different names, different voices, but the same energy.
Arise and shine, for your light is come.
This is Elena Herrera.
Good morning, this is Robert Ficano.
The final call hour with Troy Muhammad on 9:10 a.m.
We got the topics, the guests, the opinions, and the facts.
Hello, this is Angela Moore. Please join me from 3 to 5 p.m.
Be sure to catch Doing the D with Alexander Zonchek from 5 to 7 p.m.
Listen to your girl, Princess Leah, on the Leah Live Show.
Detroit, this is Michael M. Hotep, the African History Network show.
This Pastor Mo, a.k.a. the Street Preacher, a.k.a. the Street Sweeper, from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina, and join me every day from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. for Sizzle and Talk.
It's right here on 910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio.
Every business is constantly looking for new customers and ways to increase their bottom line in order to stay successful and thrive. Without new customers, your business will only decline. Let the power of AM 910 Superstation showcase your store, your company, and your product. Now that's effective advertising. AM 910 Superstation. Call 586-790-3838. That's 586-790-3838.
And good morning. You're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. You can join us. We've got a number of callers here. 313-778-7600. Adam Hellier, who is the senatorial candidate in which district number?
Second district.
Second
Olier,
district.
Bob. It's Olier.
Olier. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, it's okay. Most people get it confused.
Okay. What do you want to do to have on the ballot? The police commissioner, Willie Burton, and our libertarian here that joins us occasionally, Scotty Boman. You were at the Libertarian convention yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday, and
Where was it held?
It was held in Romulus.
Okay.
At the
I was going to make a joke.
Wyndham
I'm
Gardens.
not going to do that. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah. So our gubernatorial nominee, Bill Giano, had already stated a preference for Angelique Chaser Thomas for his running mate, a lieutenant governor candidate, and the delegates at the convention concurred and nominated her to be his running mate. We have an attorney general now candidate, Lisa Joya, who will be taking on the Republican and Democratic selections
she does
for.
Not have a law degree.
That's correct. And what's interesting, a lot of people don't know that you can be an attorney general without a law degree.
Yes.
And she's
but if you're primarily supposed to direct lawyers, that might be a little bit of an issue.
Well, she'd like to. I think her argument is going to be that she wants to bring a more common sense approach to matters of law, and really wants to really help people out who are trying to effectively work with common law and speak on their own behalf as their own attorneys also.
Okay, great. And we have a number of callers here. Let's go to John. John, you're on with Bob Ficano on the panel here.
Hey, Bob, I'm back again.
Oh, you're back.
What we have the public education system is we have legacy costs. We have 550 school districts in the state of Michigan. Nobody talked about consolidating them. We have a lot of the pension problems is what's going on. What we have is 90% of the money going into the schools is going out to the pensions and benefits of the teachers. And that's not leaving no money for the classrooms.
That's not teachers' fault, John. That's government's fault for not. Yes, you're right, and that's who needs to fix it. Not teachers, not students.
Well,
people who are elected to fix those problems need to fix it.
Educators, they're worth the weight in gold. I'll take a good teacher, but the problem is with the politicians. Now we start looking at money for schools, and the politicians got to start asking, how come 90% of the money is going to pension problems and not going to the schools?
That's an easy one. We didn't save enough money.
They didn't plan for it.
We didn't plan for it.
That's basically what happened.
People like myself who are going up to Lansing have got to go do it, and the answer can't be, oh, hey, guys, you planned for a pension, now you're not going to get it because we didn't plan to pay you. That's an unacceptable response.
Right now, the same thing's happening right now for student loans.
It is.
Taking the money. The student loans is a tipping point. It's going to be like the housing market.
But you know what? It's going to change. That is going to change. You know what's interesting, John? Now we're getting into higher education versus K through 12. But what you're starting to see is New York University. They have granted free college tuition for the whole 5 years that someone now is entering for the medical profession.
Yeah,
free for it. Southern Cal is starting to do a similar problem. Columbia is starting to do a similar program, and Columbia is doing a similar program as well. And I think what you're seeing is that they're going towards this because the reason why they gave it is they were known for their medical school and things like that. They wanted students to continue on, but some of them were looking at the debt and saying, why am I going to get into this debt? It's going to take me forever to get out of it, even if I get in a profession such as the medical profession at this point. And they're trying to lure as many people into the medical profession as possible.
The professors volunteering?
Let's get back
to endowment.
It's an endowment.
They're raising the money, and instead of spending the money
on
bricks and mortar,
it's not a Bernie program because everybody says, "Oh, look, free tuition." No, it's a capitalist that's actually doing
okay. So it is paid for by an endowment.
Yes,
okay.
And New York University is lucky. Why? Because
private university, they got people who are willing to spend money.
Yeah, the person who started Home Depot, he's put in the first $100 million into it. It's nice to have those kind of connections.
The problem is schools like Wayne State, Central Michigan, that do not have that person who's got $1 billion that they're going to let go on. Like, that's where the state's got to step up and say, we're actually going to fund higher education. You look at every state school in Michigan, and it's almost a farce to call them a state school because of the amount of tuition or the amount of money the state's giving them.
And the recruitment of out-of-state students because the tuition's higher. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hold on. When you say the state, that means all the taxpayers.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's why they're state schools. That's the difference between a state school and a private school.
You have a private school here, UD.
Versus
UD Mercy.
Versus Wayne State. Wayne State is ostensibly a public school, and it's always been cheaper to go to a public school until we stopped putting public money into states.
As a student who went to Wayne State, I could tell you that the idea of that being cheaper is
quite laughable.
Well, it is cheaper than
it's very expensive.
Yeah, it is. No, there's no doubt. All of higher education has now become expensive. But compare that to UD Mercy.
Hold on a second. Let me hold it.
Or Albion College.
I'm sorry, what?
When I was a kid, I can go. I'm from Pittsburgh. I can go work at McDonald's and attend University of Pittsburgh on a part-time class. It wasn't the state coming in and taking in.
Yes, it was.
That's the problem I had. And that's the problem I had with local school districts.
It was.
But they were getting an allotment.
Covering it.
They got an allotment from the state legislature in Pennsylvania.
No. But listen to me. In the school districts, 550 of them, from the janitor to the superintendent of that school, they all work for themselves. They use us. We gotta look at public education.
You're saying anybody who's working is working for themselves? Of course they are. If they want to better their quality of life.
I don't know.
But come on, they're all family and friends. From the superintendent to the custodian to the school board, they all work together. 550 school districts in Michigan.
John, I appreciate it.
We got too many school districts. We got too many legacy costs. It's going to kill public education. Just like the student loan. It's all coming.
Okay. John, we appreciate it. We got a number of callers. Appreciate you calling in. Next up, we have Byron. Byron, you're on with Bob Ficano, with Scotty Boman, Adam
Ollier.
Ollier. I keep saying it wrong, but
right.
it has the H on the beginning of it.
Looks like Hollier, sounds like Ollier.
Ollier, okay. And our police commissioner, Willie Burton here. Okay, Byron, you're on.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Great.
I just want to, on this topic of schools in Detroit, I want to say something to Detroiters, and I want to say something to suburbanites, because there's a disconnect, in my honest opinion. What I'm going to say, people, they're not going to like it. Suburbanites are not going to like this. Detroiters, some Detroiters know this, and some Detroiters are not going to like what I want to say. But what I'm going to say is, the people that are in control, and this is towards Detroiters, they know what's going on. They know what needs to be done to turn things around. They're aware. They just don't care because it's not going to line their pockets to help poor people. It's too slow of a process for them. It would be far more beneficial for them to continue to privily, build and establish things in places where the affluent people in Detroit are, like near downtown, like that school you have near downtown where you have to test them to get in, and, build that up and give themselves a pat on the back doing that and letting the rest of Detroit public schools crumble, until it gets to the point to where there are no schools and areas get so bad, and they buy those areas up and make them expensive, reopen the schools and make it to where it seems like they're doing something good, that they're doing something good for the community, but the reality of the matter is they're gonna make those areas so expensive that those poor, original Detroiters are not going to be able to afford the areas to even go to those schools.
Byron, the dilemma with that is that if eventually you make the schools so bad, the people that you're trying to lure into these new projects, they eventually are going to have kids. And if they don't have an education system that's going to support that they're satisfied with, you're going to have a disconnect.
Bob, I think
you're going to have a problem.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. What's going to happen? What's going to happen as the more and more as these investors, because the city of Detroit has a new investor in town, and that's the investor that wants to get rid of us poor people. I don't care what anyone says. You look at downtown. You look how it's being developed. You look at how they're pushing out small businesses by raising the rent up, and you got these business owners who are complaining and saying that it's cheaper to go rent in Royal Oak. The city of Royal Oak, as compared to Detroit, that's like that's a huge red flag right there. The people in charge that have control, that can change this, they know what's wrong. They know how to fix this whole debacle. They're not going. We can cry, we can complain, we can yell, we can fight,
But at the end of the day, as hard as it is for them to change and make reform for car insurance, it's going to be as hard as it will be the same difficulty for them to do the right thing and make our school systems better. Like the suburbs, they're not going to do that.
Byron, it's a broader issue than that. It's like
a much broader issue.
But it's like getting control of the legislature. I mean, you can make differences if you have different people that are in charge. Let's face it. Someone from outside of mid-Michigan or northern Michigan doesn't have the same issues. You'd like to think that they do it for the betterment of the state, but don't have the same issues as they would in southeastern Michigan or in the city of Detroit or Wayne County.
I think the systemic problem here is we have people in one region making decisions for people in another, and people in one school system making decisions for people in another. And it all started with the state takeover of our school systems and the delocalization of education.
But don't forget, they did that, and people don't realize Debbie Stabenow was the one that initially introduced that legislation, and John England jumped on it.
She didn't need that today. She's got a tough re-election. You're really hurting her.
But that's
we just got to stick together as them sometimes. We just got to...
Well, no, I'm not opposed. I think that the statewide, I think the statewide education aspect of it is that they were trying to level the amount of money that was going to the school districts. You had the West Bloomfields that were able to tax themselves at a lower rate, generate more money, and here you had the tax effort in the city of Detroit. She was trying to do the right thing by doing that. Yeah, I know. But she was trying to do the right thing by leveling the playing field for everybody. And England jumped on that, and it's now taken on a whole different form of what they're doing.
I mean, the reality is, and this is a statement that nobody likes and nobody's willing to accept, is that the number one predictor of educational achievement and attainment is the educational achievement and attainment of your parents. So our system is designed to support people to the level that their parents were. And so until we have the real discussion about fixing that, we're in trouble, and that's what we've got to get to. I mean, and no one has a great answer on fixing that.
No, I want to say something regarding that. That is the second part, because we're getting help from the suburbs and people with money now, but the way how we're getting help is not. It doesn't look like it's really benefiting us. It just looks like it's an open gateway for them to come and acquire, and then us Detroiters are going to get left out. In the long run.
I mean, we've been left out. The only way we're going to change is if we get in the game. And the reality is, for years, let me just...
You're not going to be able to get in the the suburbs.
There are plenty of spaces to get in the game. That's what people are doing.
If I could say something. Okay, any time is a time. But exactly. I want to say this, though. The problem is that there's only a minority of people who, really have the means to help, that will help.
Count me in that group. I'm going to the state senate in November. Let's go do it. Let's stop complaining. Let's go do it. Let's go get the work done.
I'm with you 100%, and that's why I want to send this message out to these suburbanites who call in and want to scrutinize against people and say, oh, you have the same freedoms that we have. Well, let me tell you something. You can give a man all the freedom you want. If you don't give him the courtesy to be able to go and pursue what he has the freedom to get, the chances are slim. And they will always be slim. Always. These suburbanites need to get it through their thick skulls that we do not enjoy the same courtesy, on an everyday basis that they enjoy. It's so easy for them to nitpick and say, well, this is not going on and that is not going on. But who's sitting there? Which one of these suburbanites is sitting under the roof of these poor people?
But don't forget, too, part of this is that the charter school and everything else. There's other agendas that float into this as well when you're talking about it. Byron, I appreciate it. Byron, I appreciate it. We got a number of callers we got to get to, and appreciate you calling in this morning. Chuck, you're on with Bob Ficano and the rest of the panel.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Ficano, and thank you for such a powerful platform you have here, gentlemen. Good morning to you all.
Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning.
Good morning. My point is here in Detroit, in particular, you know, from what I understand, we have over 200 cities here in the state of Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. But the point is, in Detroit in particular, you know, because I'm born and raised here in Detroit, and my point is we need more consideration when it comes to skill centers and training centers for those who are with a decent income and those who are less fortunate, you know, when it comes to finance. My point is also that we need to re-educate, because this is what, 2018, and with the technology and everything, you know, that's going on, we need to be more conscious and be more with integrity of our job skills. And we need more skill centers and training centers for those who want to help in teaching and retraining, both the students as well as the teachers as well as the students.
I agree with you, Chuck, and I think part of, I think one of the things we have to be careful of, and there's so many jobs like right now in the building trades and stuff, we're saying, well, let's center and focus laser on that. And you need part of that, but what I get concerned about is that you can't drop all the other considerations you have in school. For example, civic awareness. If we just focus on what you're going to do, building trades, laser on that, and you don't even know how government works, eventually what you're doing is dumbing down the situation where people, once they get through the system, they got to know how government works, because they're the ones that are going to be voting on it.
Let me just
that needs to be taught also. That needs to be taught also. That's one of the major keys, you know, is to teach
civic awareness.
But that's why we got to take politicians out of designing curriculum.
That's why I agree.
Yeah,
but what I was going to say about how government works.
Science. We need political science as well as any other profession. You know, like we have fire, we have police, and you know, anything that needs to be done. You know, it's very simple, but then again, it seems the simplest things are the most complicated, because everybody has a viewpoint. Yeah. We can sing together, but it's kind of hard to talk at the same time. But
you got it.
We'll be all right. You know, we just consider and just do more when it comes to training centers and re-educating, and understand that we're at a state where we're at a point where there's the technology seems to be taking over, you know.
I appreciate it, Chuck. Thanks for calling.
We have to roll with it.
We got a number of callers here. Thanks for calling in. Scotty, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, because one thing, bringing up the topic of you know, learning how government works and how the elections work, and I wanted to bring up the fact that we have a case where Proposal R, the charter revision proposal, barely squeaked through, and I have testimony from 5 people who did not even have Proposal R on their ballot. It was not even listed. We have election workers over at the Dickerson place where Precinct 25 is in Detroit.
That should be brought up
we're actually
to the
telling, oh, it will be, and
yeah.
We're filing a recall petition tomorrow. You know, I am filing it individually, but it's, you know, with cooperation of D.R.A.C.O.
On the Detroit Clerk?
Yes, we're going to be recounting, and by the way, they're actually clerking.
Okay, on recall on the clerk or
no, recount.
Oh, recount.
I'm sorry if I misspoke.
Yeah.
We're going to be, and in fact, speaking of the clerk, we had election workers actually telling a person that the proposal was not even on the primary ballot, that all the proposals were in the general election ballots. We have deception. We have misprinted ballots. We have a very thin margin of victory by the proposal. And so that's, I'm picking up on 5 precincts where that happened, and then the Detroit People's Platform said they're also going to be filing a recall petition in some other precincts.
Okay, we have a number of callers. I want you to hang on, but
I mean not recount. I keep saying recall. I meant recount.
Recount. We have a number of callers, but hold on. I think we got a real expert who used to be the president of the union. If this is the same Keith Johnson that I see on my monitor here, Keith, are you with us?
Good morning, Mr. Ficano. How you doing?
And it is he who used to be president of the Teachers Union in the city of Detroit. Welcome, Keith.
Welcome, Keith.
That is correct. Good morning. Good morning. You know, when you look at some of the states that have had significant growth, particularly in those economically depressed areas like New Jersey, Kentucky, Massachusetts, and Tennessee, they restructured their funding system where they did what's called adequacy funding, where rather than simply allotting an equal amount per student to school districts across their respective states, they did school funding predicated upon need. So, for example, in a city like Detroit, where you have about 15% of the students who are in special needs, in our special needs population, there's different funding that is needed in order to meet their academic needs than you might have in some other communities. And as much as people like to simply focus upon Detroit, there are a number of rural communities as well that are experiencing some of the same challenges financially that we face in cities like Detroit, Flint, and Saginaw. So for me, and what I've been pushing for, going back to the time when I was president, is for us to look at adequacy funding. Now, the governor did approve a bill to at least look at it, but we are not acting upon it. The other thing that I want to say is I think two grave mistakes that we made was when charters began to arise in the mid-1990s, many of us, including us as union leaders, treated them as like a passing fancy, rather than taking them as a serious, not necessarily threat, but as a serious option. And so therefore we missed out on the opportunity to establish some regulations and guidelines that would be applicable to them the same as they are to traditional public schools. The other mistake that I believe that we made, we put so much emphasis on getting students college ready that we lost emphasis on the development of skilled trades, and the two are not mutually exclusive. They should be in unison, because you have some students who may not have an interest or even an aptitude to go to college, but they certainly can learn a marketable skill that will allow them to become gainfully employed upon graduation. So those are among the things that I think we have to address if we're really serious about addressing some of the concerns that we have in education. And finally, we've got to have an honest discussion about the change in the demeanor of the students that we are teaching today. Because with social media and all of these other distractions that come their way that directly and indirectly affect their performance in the classroom, it's not realistic to think that you can simply put those concerns into a bottle and between the hours of 8 and 3 believe that they are not impacting how our students behave among each other and certainly in relation to their teachers. And this is not unique to big cities. This is happening in school districts, urban, suburban, and rural.
Keith, you raise a great point. You raise a great point on that because of teaching the classes I do at Wayne County Community College. The social media is a whole direct impact on how they think, what they do, what information they get.
Whoa, Bob, maybe the way we think, the way we interact. Come on. Well, you make me seem like I'm a little kid now.
No, but what I'm saying is that trying to get them up on just public events. Yeah. The social media has a different perspectives a little bit. A lot of it is ignoring it and not realizing the overarching, when I talk about President Trump and some of the things he's doing, sometimes you just get these blank looks and they don't realize the impact of what national leaders are doing, what state leaders are doing, what the Flint water crisis is really all about.
Well, you got the way in which Trump has managed and his people have managed to manipulate media, where now he's pushing things like the National Enquirer as really the premier journalistic source, and of course the publisher, David Pecker of the National Enquirer, was buying off stories from people that actually had dirt on Trump and then getting exclusives so they wouldn't be able to talk to anyone else about it and putting it in a safe.
But I think the point that Keith raises about social media is different. It impacts the way things are done in the classroom and what happens.
But isn't that an opportunity to change? I mean, I think that's the thing, is that all these things are different. Like, I was talking to a woman. I've been on Facebook since 2004, so almost 15 years when it first started. And it's changed a lot. It's changed how those things happen. So, like, even sitting here, I'm like, hey, guys, watch this thing on Facebook. You know, when Brian got nominated, that was the first way that we told families. That's where people are getting news. And as much as we like it or dislike it, those are things that are happening that for teachers to be effective, we should be talking about how do we develop those things in their curriculum. You know, I've seen schools be very successful doing that.
You're absolutely right. And I personally believe that that should be an integral part of teacher training now. I mean, just like we had reading in the content area, we need to have something that deals with the impact of social media in the classroom, whether you're talking about cyberbullying or you simply talk about the way the kids communicate with each other and even with their teachers. It's a completely different dynamic that we have to infuse into our educational approach.
I mean, to Keith's point, I mean, you talk about job skills. Like, you know, when I first started in college, there was this discussion about whether your social media could even be looked at by the university. Should they be looking at that? Should they include, you know, consider that when they do jobs?
Right.
You know, in HR, there was this very real discussion about, was that the line of privacy? And you look at today, my nephew is a freshman at Eastern. He got recruited, and, you know, coach texting him on, you know, instant messaging him on Twitter or on Facebook, on all those things. But they can't call him. The NCAA regulations say they can't call him. They say he can't visit him.
I think they're supposed to limit the texting, too, but I could be wrong on that.
They can snap. There's no rule against snapping. There's no rule against all these other avenues. And now we've got to find ways to make sure that not only are our children engaged in these spaces, but they're not left behind. That's another space where technology makes a big difference. And to Keith's point, it's not just an urban issue. That's a rural issue. And as a state senator, that's the type of space where I've got to find camaraderie and space with some of those Republican or more conservative folks, because we have the same issues. We're representing the same constituents. They just look differently.
Nice. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for calling in. Jim, you're on with Bob Ficano and the rest of the panel here.
Yeah, what I couldn't understand for years, like Coleman Young wanted to get a Detroit lottery, and maybe if he had did that, it would have saved some of the school. All Michigan did with the Detroit lottery money, them areas out there in the suburbs with 20, 40 years ago when they was getting that blue-collar dollar that they ain't getting now, all they do with the lottery money is use it in areas like that. That's why they closed all the schools down here. They closed all the schools in the high schools in the city, and they took that money and helped them. What do you think? People just crazy?
Yes. Yes, they do.
Jim, the fallacy of the lottery money being used for education, what they do is, this is a simple example. Let's say your education budget is $100 million. You raise $2 million through the lottery. These are all very simplified. It's a lot more money. What they do then, when they do the budget, then they make the budget $98 million and just simply slip in the $2 million to round it back off to the $100 million. So, I mean, it's not in addition to the funding for education. It is substituted in to the budget for the education. So, they can honestly say during campaign time, the money 100% goes into education. It does, but all it does is actually bump out some of the other money that's already there, and it's plugged in.
Which is why it's going to be so critical for us to make sure once marijuana becomes legal, and I expect it to be after November, that we put those dollars in education as an addition.
It's a situation they always had with Detroit and Harlan Park, just like when they got casino gambling there. Harlan Park was the first people who voted for it, but the Republican legislators didn't want them to have it. They didn't want them to have it. They have never wanted black folks in this city to be sufficient when they didn't have to depend on people. They just think people just crazy. I mean, it's just common sense. They don't want you to be sufficient to do what you can be independent and do on their own. They figure that ain't the same thing with the education system. And everybody should go to school and get an education. Who country. Anytime a minority do something good and great, if you swing in a golf club and it's real good, we're going to move it a mile down. If you swing in a tennis and it's doing good, don't wear this. You know, this country is just cruelty racist.
Okay, we appreciate it, Jim. Thanks for calling in. Tom, we're going to need you to hold on here. We got to go to break, but we'll get you as soon as we're done with break. Thank you. You listen to 910 AM Superstation. Here we go.
This is Gene Zamler for 1-800-Lawyers, the Michigan law firm representing Michigan people for work-related injuries. If you have been injured on the job and are tired fighting with case managers and adjusters, call 1-800-Lawyers. Don't settle for pennies when you may be entitled to more. Don't risk your future or the future of your family due to your work injury. Call the law firm with over 45 years of representing injured workers. Call 1-800-Lawyers. The call is free. The advice is free.
910 AM is the gold standard for talk radio. It's raw, uncut, and untamed.
So I'm telling you, when I stayed in Detroit and Sterling Heights for 9 years, my water bill for a year was $132.
$132?
$132.
These people are criminals that do this
And
stuff.
so like now, my water bill every month is $52 a month.
But you know, Michigan, centered right in the middle of the Great Lakes.
Yeah, figure that out.
The greatest source of fresh water on the planet.
Yeah.
Flint, Michigan, the highest water rates in America for poisoned water, and they're threatening to cut off the poisoned water from some of America's poorest folks anywhere. In Flint, Michigan. And folks there are shell-shocked, quite frankly, by everything that's going down there. Here in Detroit, water shut-offs, nearly 20,000 slated to go down shortly. And what happens? Hepatitis. And there is a direct connection between water shut-offs and the increase in hepatitis. And we take it.
910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio. Who's the future of radio? We are. Who has the hot takes and best calls? We do. And where do you go to get the breaking news and expert opinion?
Would they look at the latest news headline at the top of the hour?
None other than 910 AM Superstation. We've got you covered from sun up to sundown during the week with Greg Davis.
Hey, this is Bishop Greg Davis.
Kerry Jackson. Nolan Finley. Jack Lessenberry. Bankalay Thompson. The Reverend Al Sharpton.
Do you know what time it is? It's Al Sharpton's time.
And Sam Riddle. And don't forget to listen to Henry Payne, Elena Herrera, and Angela Moore.
Hello, this is Angela Moore. Please join me on Empowered every Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m.
It's the greatest collection of minds on the radio, and they can only be found in one place. None other than 910 AM Superstation, the future of radio. 910 AM Superstation is the voice of Detroit. We've assembled an unmatched roster of talent, topics, and opinions designed to reflect the heartbeat of the city. We've got it all. The news, the sports, politics, relationships, activists, and everything in between. We are 910 AM Superstation, the voice of Detroit. 910 AM Superstation is the voice of the people. Don't believe me? Just listen.
910 AM has something that no other station has. A platform for everyone to have a voice. Black, white, young, old. It's a place for people to be themselves.
I love 910 AM. So many articulate and thoughtful, diverse voices and wonderful stories.
So when you think of 910 AM Superstation, we want you to tune in, call in, and don't forget to find us on social media. 910 AM Superstation. We're the hottest station in town. Why? Because when it happens, we talk about it.
You can't really limit what's on the internet, especially in a country that has First Amendment rights, that people are allowed to say and do whatever they want to do. You are going to have all sorts of things on the internet which can be harmful. Pornography, plans for bombs, plans for stalking people, how to commit other crimes, how to rob banks. Anything that you want to try and find out is on the internet. And the government knows it, and the government has, if you have not been paying attention to any of the technology and where it is as of today, not where it's headed in the future, but where it is today. Our government has used their police powers, the health, safety, and welfare powers to basically monitor monitor a lot of the activity, the things that you put in on your keystrokes. If you look up how to make a bomb, the government finds out about it. If you look up how to stalk someone, the government finds out about it. So of course, when you're downloading plans, and apparently yesterday before this court issued a temporary restraining order, there were over 1 million people who downloaded plans for a homemade AR-15.
910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio. We're the hottest station in town. Whatever you need, it's right here on 910 AM Superstation. The most powerful voices in the urban community.
3, 2, 1.
You are listening to 910 AM Superstation. The future of radio. You are listening to 910 AM Superstation.
The best in the city.
The future of radio. WFDF Farmington Hills, Detroit. 910 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
Would you and your loved ones recognize the 10 signs of stroke? Anybody's at risk for stroke, and it can happen to anyone at any time.
I didn't think this could happen to me.
I was only 39.
If you suspect stroke, call 911 immediately.
The day I suffered a stroke, my wife recognized the signs and took action.
The day I suffered a stroke, my husband didn't wait for my symptoms to disappear.
Can you recognize the 10 signs of stroke?
And good morning. You're listening to Robert Ficano. You can call us at 313-778-7600, 910 AM, the Superstation. Here with Adam Ollier. You got it right this time?
Ollier.
Ollier.
But much closer.
All right. Okay. He's got his name right stenciled right across his shirt.
Look anything like
and it doesn't look like anything like it's written here. And we also have Willie Burton, who's police commissioner, and Scotty Boman with the Libertarian Party as well. We're going to finish up, and then we're going to go to George Hunter here in a minute. But Tom, you held through the break, so you're welcome to 910 AM, the Superstation.
Yeah, good morning. In terms of the previous caller and him talking about, the schools being closed, you know what? I personally believe that the reason they closed those schools was to basically save money. I mean, when you look at most of those schools were built, all right, but Detroit at its highest was like 1,800,000 people. And I mean, we fast forward to today, and we're roughly closely 680,000. And, those schools, some of them were not even a third, let alone a half, filled with student bodies. And, to pump money in there, and, you're paying to heat a two-thirds or a half of an empty building, I mean, that just does not make good financial sense right there. And so, the school, there was no nefarious thing done in terms of, these school closings and what have you. It's what it is. The bodies weren't there to put them in there, and you had to, and which was not really a great idea because of all of the, what I guess you can call it, the gang stuff. You're trying to move, students from Cooley to Mumford, or either from where Redford was up to, the one up here, 8 Mile and Evergreen, Henry Ford, so, and, you're going to get a lot of blowback, right there in terms of, kids having problems with, new kids coming in and that kind of stuff. But, no, that's the reason those schools were closed.
Okay. Well, we appreciate the perspective there, Tom, and calling in. Appreciate it.
Hi.
Now, we have joining us here this morning, Mr. George Hunter from the Detroit News. I happen to see him at an unfortunate situation with the funeral of Sergeant Smith, the deputy sheriff who was tragically killed in Hines Park this past week. His service was at Greater Grace, and saw a lot of people that I knew there, and then Sergeant Smith had been a person that I actually had worked with when I was sheriff, and also as county executive. Sometimes I go out and ride, and he'd be there, and he was working on the mountain unit and would ride with me, probably to make sure I wasn't falling off the horse or something. But he was always there with me, and he was a great individual. also really loved too the ride on the motorcycles and the unit that he was involved in with some of that. And the sad part was he was about to retire. I understand he submitted his retirement papers for October 1st, and you know, it was just a sad occasion all around when you see something like that happen. And George, I know you were there and had some of the coverage of it.
Yeah, can't tell you how many police funerals I've covered in my career, 10, 15, 20 at least, and they're all sad. The bagpipes, the whole thing is just, you know, funerals aren't happy occasions, you know, anyway, but usually when you cover a police officer, when they're newsworthy, usually something bad happens. Somebody was, you know, killed, murdered, you know. It wasn't just a natural death. You know, usually when we cover them, there's some circumstances like that, which makes it even sadder. And, you know, they're just, you know, very sobering occasions, and very hard to be that, you know, the objective journalist and not have any emotions, you know, because you do, especially if you knew I didn't know Mr. Smith, but my brother, who's the Wayne County Sheriff deputy, he knew him. Everybody in the department knew this guy, apparently. I remember when they asked, the woman asked how many people out here have been trained by him, and more than half the people in the church all raised their hands. So he did make an impact, and that's kind of what it's all about, I guess. You know, as they say, as Jackie Robinson has on his epitaph and his gravestone, that your life is only worth what kind of impact you made. You know, and so it sounds like he made that impact. So
yeah, he did. Well, I know and appreciate the coverage for it and what that was. And I didn't realize your brother was a deputy sheriff in Wayne County. Okay.
Yeah, he's getting ready to retire. He's been there like 30-something.
I was going to say, because I know, what division is he in right now?
He's been in the jail. He works the midnight shift. He's known as an artist. That's what everyone knows him as. He's a redheaded guy. Okay. And he's been there 30-something years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't realize there was a connection there. Okay.
Yeah,
I guess I'd hide you too. I'm not sure. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I don't know the way the newspaper business is going these days. I might be coming for a job. So.
Well, you are covering a number of stories concerning law enforcement, so why don't you bring this up to date, some of the most recent things you've been covering, if that's all right.
Sure. One of the issues that I looked at last week was the body cameras, Detroit police.
Yes.
They just got them last year. They had experimented with them the year prior to that in a couple precincts just to see how it would go. And what's kind of interesting about the Detroit body camera program is that it was officer generated. The officers came to the brass and said, "Hey, you know, we want body cameras." And it's interesting, Bob, about body cameras. You know, as you know, there are often two opposite poles when it comes to law enforcement and how people view them. You know, you could call it liberal, conservative, whatever dialectic you want to insert in there. But there's certainly, you know, there's a left-right component to that. And with body cameras, that's one of the few areas where you get almost universal agreement on all sides of the political spectrum that, you know, these are a good thing because they tell, in most cases, they tell what happened if they're turned on. And that's I talked to.
Which is one of the big issues sometimes. They don't always get flipped on all the time.
Yeah, I know in Royal Oak, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In Royal Oak, for instance, they are actually trying. I know an activist. He's actually a libertarian running for Congress. Brian Ellison. He's been pushing. Though locally for body cameras there because they've had a problem with homicides perpetrated by police officers in Royal Oak, and the police officers there are very resistant to body cameras.
That's interesting. You know, most of the cops I know are happy. The only concern they had was they weren't sure. You know, a lot of stuff people don't know about technology when it comes out. And one of the concerns was, I don't want to be sitting in my squad car complaining about my sergeant, you know, and that gets picked up, you know, and then my sergeant knows who doesn't sit in when they're away from their boss and complain about their boss other than me and everyone else here. You know, everyone else does it.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I mean, things like that, there's a resistance on that front. But most of the cops I know, they want them because they get accused falsely sometimes of doing something. And then again, most of the civil rights folks I know want them because there are instances where police do things that, you know, they shouldn't be doing.
and sometimes break the law, and those capture that as well. So, you know, other than the privacy issue, which is not a small issue when it comes to these things. I mean, how many people would like to have a camera stuck on them recording all the time? But that's not what they do. They don't record all the time. You know, they kick in, for instance, in Detroit, I don't know if other departments have it, but if your squad car goes past a certain speed, they automatically turn on. But then it's up to the officer to turn them on, you know, prior to engaging a citizen, and that's written in the DPD policy. Although I talked to Assistant Chief White, and I asked him, there's some times when they can't turn them on. And there are legitimate reasons, too. I mean, there's also some questionable reasons why. There was one, I believe it was Louisiana, where they just shut the cameras off, you know, and it was a fatal shooting. You know, why would you mute them at that point? But, you know, they were on already, and then they muted them. But say you walk up to a scene, and you got to, and it wasn't a scene where you're rushing to it. And, you know, as every cop will tell you, there are times when that happens. You go to a scene, and oh, no, this guy's pulled out a gun. You know, your instinct is to pull your own gun out and, you know, stop the threat as opposed to turning your body camera on. So there are times where it's legitimately excusable not to have turned it on, you know. And another caveat about these things, too, is that I made sure to say that they almost always capture what happened. Sometimes they don't. And the example one of the cops told me is, let's say you're driving in your squad car and you look over and you see a guy, you know, smoking a joint, for instance, but it's, you know, 3 blocks up or a block and a half up or to the right where your camera's not focused and your camera's not on at that point. So there are times, you know, and that's your probable cause for a stop, but that didn't get captured by the body camera. So there are times where they won't pick everything up, but usually they tell the story of what happened, which is what everybody wants.
And they help the officer sometimes. I mean, if there's a confrontation and they're being accused of something, I think even your article you wrote this week talked about there was a party store incident, and the individual accused the officer of doing something inappropriate, and the body camera pretty well cleared the officer and showed that he didn't do the action that he was accused of.
I'm excited about real eyewitnesses. It's nothing like being able to go back to the tape and say this is what happened or didn't happen.
And in that case, it's interesting because that exonerated him from one claim, but it also verified another claim, because this officer was saying that he wasn't allowed to write loitering tickets. And, you know, then that's not true. You know, they can write loitering tickets. Now, I have been told subsequently that in the old days they were told that, you know, that not that they can't write them, but
policy-wise, they weren't the priority of what they were going to do.
Right, of course. But, I mean, it's wrong information that you're giving this guy to say we can't write tickets. And, of course, there's been other high, you know, profile in Detroit. You remember the fight between, I believe it was the 11th and 12th precinct undercover officers. They weren't aware they were undercover during the drug raid. The body camera picked all that, you know, the whole fight. And you know, so that one came real close to somebody getting killed. And Chief Craig then called that the most embarrassing thing that's happened since he's been on, you know, as chief in Detroit. But so, you know, they pick up the good and the bad, and I think that's the fair way to look at it. Now, I did seek and receive some stats from the Office of the Chief Investigator, which now that investigates deportment issues. If the cop is alleged to have done something criminal, that will go to IA. But if, you know, somebody says, hey, the cop was a smart aleck to me during the traffic stop, or, you know, something that's not a criminal, but it's certainly, you know, it's certainly bad one way. Yeah, absolutely. So the OCI, Office of Chief Investigator, will investigate that. And it turns out that I think only about a third of those, 30% of those were found to be, you know, of the allegations, only 30% were found to have been, you know, verified, and the other third, I think, was unverified. They didn't know one way or another, and then only, you know, the rest of them, they were exonerated. Actually, I need to look up the stats. The point is, the only 30%, I think, of those allegations, they handled 439. I got it right here. Between January and June, only 30% of those were proven. 133 of those cases of the 400 were found to be true. So, you know, if you say the cop cussed at me, for instance, you know, only 30% of the time was that actually shown to be true. And 197 of them, they were deemed unfounded, so they don't know one way or another. And then about 109 were actually completely exonerated.
Okay, well, we got a caller on the line here who has a question about Jerry. Jerry, you're on with Bob Ficano on the panel.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Robert Ficano. Good morning to you, and thank you for taking my call, and good morning to your distinguished guests with you. We appreciate their service. Mr. Robert Ficano, I want to salute every fallen police officer who they gave their life during the line of duty, like Sergeant Smith and like Officer Fadi Shakur. We appreciate their service, and God bless them and bless their family. My question here, Mr. Robert Ficano, to your distinguished guest. Recently, in metropolitan Detroit, we see a lot of numbers of breaking in, smash, robbery, kidnapping. I do remember I saw the horrible picture when a lady, she went to the bank to withdraw $75,000 with her husband. And look how when she was in her way to the car, when there's one or two individuals, they grabbed her purse, and then her husband, he came to stop the this criminal act, and how that lady was dragged under the car, and her husband was halfway in the car and in the street. My question is, gentlemen, don't you think when someone individual doing this, don't you think this is terrorize the neighborhood, terrorize our citizens? Could we consider those crimes not a robbery, but domestic terrorist a crime? Could we treat them as a domestic terrorism? I would appreciate your answer, and thank you, and God bless you all.
I guess it's an interesting question, Jerry. I think at this point, I mean, the statutes for like robbery, abduction, kidnapping, all the things that I think it sounded like that the unfortunately the woman and her husband and her spouse went through, those are pretty heavy sentences. I mean, if they get charged with like 3 or 4 of these counts, there's probably well over 20 years of sentencing that if a judge wanted to, that they could put the individuals in for. So, I mean, it's pretty enhanced now. Adding it as a domestic terrorist, it's generally, that's something against the public in a general term of what they're doing. Like if I'm going to put a poisonous gas in a subway station, or in a subway tube, that's really an impact on the total number of individuals that within a certain location and things like that, which probably is closer to the definition of a domestic terrorist versus even some have argued like the shooting in the nightclub, like in Florida, where they shoot 40, 50 people. That might fall closer to that type of definition. Individual crimes, there's like 3 or 4 counts that they can levy, and if the judge wants to put you away for 20, 25 years, they can do it under those particular counts. I don't know, George, you've seen quite a few of these, and everybody here, and Willie, obviously, with being a police commissioner, you've seen some of that as well. So I'm not sure what
I've got
what it is.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry, Bob.
Go ahead.
I have my laptop in front of me, actually, and I'm looking up the definition of terrorism, which is the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. I think that's the important quotient that has to be present, I think, before you call it terrorism, is there has to be some sort of a political aim of why you're doing this. If you just shoot somebody because you lost in cards, even if you get mad, let's say you shooting dice, and this actually happens a lot, in crack games. That's why a lot of the blind pigs won't allow crack games in their, they have poker games, but craps, you can lose money so fast, people get mad, they start shooting. I'm telling you, yeah, a lot of the blind pigs won't even allow it. They make their money on the poker game, but they won't allow a crack game because it's a violent.
Honor among the thieves,
Yeah, when you lose money, you're top. You don't have time to think, and you're, 15,000 down, and someone whips out a gun and say they could just get mad and they shoot 7 people right there, well, that doesn't count as terrorism because the political part of that isn't present, you know.
Okay, hold on. We've got to go to break. Norris, hold on. We're going to get your call as soon as we get back from break. And George, hang on. We appreciate you being on the air with us. Damn,
Thank you.
That's a lot of money.
This is Gene Zamler for 1-800-LAWYERS, the Michigan law firm representing individuals injured in automobile accidents. If you have been injured in an automobile accident, you need to call 1-800-LAWYERS. Auto accidents are serious. Lost wages, loss of your career, or worse. Our firm has won millions of dollars for people all across Michigan who have been injured in automobile accidents. Our attorneys are aggressive and won't back down to the insurance companies. To get the money you deserve, call 1-800-LAWYERS.
Every weeknight at 9 p.m. is something new and something fresh.
This is Todd Corser, and I want you to check out my show. Listen in and call every week as we explore government and hot topics. Tune in, raw and uncut.
This is attorney Michael Schwartz at 9:10 AM Superstation, and you can hear me every Tuesday night starting at 9 p.m.
Hello, Detroit. This is attorney Crystal Crittenden, and please tune in to my new show, The Truth Matters, on 9:10 AM Superstation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlene Mitchell, your host of Mind Your Business. Listen to my show live every Thursday from 9 to 11 p.m.
I'm Reverend Maya Lisa Reynolds, inviting you to listen to Mama Maya Speaks Friday evenings from 9 until 11 p.m., discussing education, motivation, and inspiration on Superstation 910 AM.
Different names, different voices, but the same energy. 910 AM Superstation. We are the future of radio. 910 AM Superstation is the voice of the people. Don't believe me? Just listen.
I absolutely love this radio station. This station gets me through the work week.
And we don't just show love to the callers. We see the comments and the posts too.
I'm always on the go, so being able to watch all my favorite hosts on 910 AM mobile app is amazing.
So when you think of 910 AM Superstation, we want you to tune in, call in, and don't forget to find us on social media.
And good morning. You're listening to 910 AM, the Superstation. You can reach us at 313-778-7600. Also, I want to remind you that 910 AM Superstation is broadcasting live from the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers Hydrofest, 24th, 25th, and today, the 26th. 910 AM Superstation all weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from the Metro Detroit Chevy Dealers Hydrofest. So come out and feel free to join. We're currently in the studio. We're the only ones that's not out there, but because it hasn't started yet. You know, go out and have a great time. I think people will really enjoy it. It's part of the tradition of Detroit. It was saved just a couple of years ago in terms of people thought the races might not be able to continue on, but sponsors have gotten together, and it's part of the Detroit fabric now. Okay, we have George Hunter on with us from the Detroit News. We're also joined today by Adam Ollier.
Ollier.
I know it's French.
You're getting close, though. I mean,
getting close. What can I say?
People I've known my whole life still
H
messing up. Yeah.
Okay.
The H is silent. The IER makes an A sound. There's no reason anyone would get it.
The
right.
Italians don't get it. Willie Burton, who is a police commissioner with the city of Detroit, and with Scotty Boman from the Libertarian, also Wayne County Community College professor as well.
Also Detroit residents advancing civilian oversight.
Yes, that too. Norris, you're on with George Hunter and with the rest of the panel here. Norris?
Good morning. I just want to comment on the question that the caller before the break brought up about domestic terrorism. I look at some of the acts that are committed against the public, and the thing that I see that determines whether it's just a crime or domestic terrorism is who commits it. There's no one on the planet that you could look at what that idiot did in Las Vegas when he murdered, 50, 60 people, injured 300 folk, and not one commentator on any news show that I listen to called him a domestic terrorist. He's a white guy. You get a guy driving down the street
runs over 5 or 6 people. He's got brown skin. Right away, he's a terrorist. A crime is a crime. And if you do something that's against the public and it's to change the way the public lives their lives, call it what it is. You're doing it to strike terror in people's heart. That, in my mind, makes you a terrorist. How could that guy in Las Vegas not be a terrorist?
Yeah, you know, my thought on the whole terrorism versus other crime thing is it's really just a federal way to get around the regular due process of prosecuting people for a crime. Murder is murder, and whether you kill multiple people for a political motive to satisfy some psychotic itch or for profit, to me it's equally evil. And we have laws on the books where a person could, you know, spend the rest of their lives or be executed for that, and there's no in prison, or be executed for that, and there's no reason to have additional laws other than to get around due process as far as all the Patriot Act and NDAA go and all that stuff.
Maybe a little bit on the federal level, but you have crimes that are looked at by society saying, yeah, it's an act and it should be punished, but it's repulsive enough that they want to enhance it, like hate crimes.
And Norris, I would say, you know, that first, you know, that day of, you know, you were 100% right. No one was saying this was terrorism. But the next day, and I think, you know, as more, you know, other people, other voices were calling it terrorism. I mean, every black journalist I heard was saying, hey, this is terrorism. But it was another conversation, another opportunity for us to say, hey, this is another thing that doesn't smell right. This is another thing that doesn't look right. And it was an opportunity for people to have to really step up and say why they judged it differently, and race was the big component. So I was glad to see not only the pushback, but the fact that they had to respond. And, you know, when we look at that thing, I mean, it really catapulted back into the media because it said, oh, well, let's go back and look at these things. And, of course, when they do the numbers, the majority of terrorist activities that occur on American soil are perpetrated by white men. And they are never the ones getting profiled. They're never the ones that people are looking for. But that was another opportunity for people like ourselves, people who are willing to look at the truth and chase the truth, for us to talk about it. So I'm glad about it. But that's one of those reasons that AM 910 Superstation is such an important avenue, such an important space for people to start talking about these issues, because it rises to the level where people like George, who are in the mainstream media, have to say, oh, hey, they're talking about this thing. They hear it, they notice it, and they run down those facts. So we appreciate that synergy.
Also, I'm looking at headlines, and I push back on the caller's allegation that because the shooter was white, no one called it terrorism.
I think that was that first
shooting was terrorism.
They amended it.
Headline.
I'm sorry. Right at the very beginning, they weren't calling it terrorism. They quickly did.
Well, when you don't know what the motive is, I mean, again, if there's not a political, if somebody white or black shoots 7 people during an argument, that's a mass shooting. Is it domestic terrorism? Remember the D.C. sniper attacks? Those guys were black. I don't recall anyone calling that terrorism. I'm looking that up now. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's the case. I mean,
I think when you bring up the D.C. sniper, nobody thought the D.C. sniper was going to be black. I mean, in a lot of ways, the reason that he was able to continue as long, and a number of the investigators said that is not who they were thinking about in the profile. So it's not to say that it was meant to be biased, just that as humans we have bias. But
well, certainly after the fact, everybody knew who he was. And I'm looking it up now. I don't see a whole bunch of allegations of terrorism.
Should have been.
I don't think they were calling him. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, the point is that I think people shoehorn race into a lot of things where it doesn't fit. And if a white guy expressed, let's put it this way, did they call Timothy McVeigh's boy? He was about as white as you get. I'm pretty sure they called that terrorism.
Absolutely, yeah. When he blew up the Oklahoma building.
I was down there.
He had a political goal, same as the Unabomber. Again, another white guy. They called him terrorist. If you have a political end to it, again, I think people shoehorn race into things where it doesn't belong, and you muddy the discussion at that point. Because, yeah, again, I'm not, I'm looking.
Weren't they calling the militia terrorists? Weren't they calling some of the militia terrorists during the Clinton years? That they were the
Michigan militia only after Only after the Oklahoma City bombing, when they went after the Michigan militia, and they were talking about it.
But they're saying that...
What did they do that would constitute them being called terrorists, though?
Well,
did they shoot somebody? Or
they had those...
They had a political agenda why they were doing stuff.
However,
I mean, it wasn't viewed as usually terrorist political agenda, but I mean, their political agenda was to tear down the government of the United States, basically.
Well, the Michigan militia was not directing the actions of Tim McVeigh. He was acting with other people, and there's a lot of people in the Michigan militia who are simply political activists who also support gun rights and are not in the Constitution and are not really, interested in anything like acts of terrorism. In fact, sometimes some of them volunteer for like civil defense activities and stuff in their communities.
Yeah, but some of them actually do plot, but I know the case was thrown out. It was right before the Kwame Kilpatrick trial, and I can't remember. It was a federal case that they brought against like 5 or 6 of them that were in northern Michigan or something. And
I covered that case. Yeah.
It got tossed out. Yeah, and it got tossed out, but they were plotting to do, or they threw around that they were plotting. I guess they never finalized the plans, which was why the jury didn't convict them, is that there were plans for doing things to disrupt the federal government, the U.S. government. In what I forget what the actions were that they were planning, but it was violence, is what they were planning.
If I remember correctly, wasn't the FBI basically? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going by memory here. I remember they were sitting in a car, and the guy from the FBI was saying stuff like, "Yeah, we should go blow this stuff up, shouldn't we?" And the guy was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess." And then,
yeah.
If I remember correctly,
they're egging them on,
that, and that's why it got thrown out.
Yeah, sort of an entrapment situation, a little bit. Yeah.
So I mean, again, I don't think anybody had any qualms about calling Timothy McVeigh a terrorist. That was universal, and so the race thing to me doesn't fit here.
I think the point is about the shootings. I think that's where it is. I think if you have a bomb, you do the explosion. I think people are generally pretty safe in doing that. I think that there's some line with the shooting, and I think to your point as a news person, yeah, there can be some gray, and you may not get it in that first space. But for most people, they think that that's intentional, and I think that's.
Well, I would make the argument that I'm going to argue that as a news person, it's not my job to call something terrorism. If the authorities call it terrorism, I will put the T word in my story. If the authorities don't, I'm not a columnist. So as a journalist, I'm just going to call it a mass shooting until somebody in authority officially says it's terrorism, then I'm not going there.
Which is really the right approach to do it, actually. It shouldn't be called anything until they can actually disseminate the facts of what was. If there's a political motive to it, it is definitely then a terrorist act.
And there's a statute. I mean, there's a Michigan statute that specifically lays out, what has to be there, in order to call it terrorism. If you remember, they charged the guy who was saying on Facebook he was going to kill all cops and he was going to kill all white cops. They charged that guy, and I believe he got convicted because the prosecutor.
Yeah, he did. It was under an enhanced terrorist account. I think he did get convicted.
Yeah, the AG. That's right. The AG took that case on and got a conviction. Prosecutors didn't sign the warrant. They had submitted the warrant to prosecutors, and there's specific. There's for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. I'm looking at the Michigan Penal Code terrorist statute, and there are specific threats to commit an act of terrorism. Some of it's kind of vague, but
and that's the problem. And George, that raises a point. I mean, the vagueness of it. I know you cross over a little bit into the First Amendment in terms of what if people say I don't like what so-and-so is doing as a political leader, you can't say go kill him, but you can say, I think, this thing should be taken out. Not taken out in terms of violence, but, that there should be a change in what happens. And that's, it gets into a real gray area sometimes.
Was Madonna saying she wants to blow up the White House? Is that terrorism? I mean, I think you got to use some common sense sometimes. It's like she was doing, she was engaging in, hyperbole, rhetoric, I think the intent, and that's where it gets sticky, though. I mean, well, how can you determine as a law enforcement officer, is this a real threat or is it just someone running their mouth, And there have been, several Secret Service people checking when they say they wanted to kill Trump, for instance. And a lot of people say that, so there's a lot of terrorism going on in that case, so.
Yeah, he probably does a lot, and his wife and his family, everybody else, I know is part of it.
Sure.
Jerry, you're on with us here on the panel. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Robert. Thank you, Mr. Robert Ficano, for taking my call. I appreciate it. I just want to make a little comment about the domestic terrorism to your distinguished guests. Do you remember, gentlemen, a couple of months ago when there was a couple people sitting at the front porch somewhere in Detroit, and 2-3 individuals came into that gentleman who used to be a veteran, a war veteran, a hero who fought for this country. When he was sitting with his wife at the front porch, enjoying his life as a citizen who retired, who fought in the war. And those 2-3 individuals came in, and they took what he got from jewelry, from his watch, from his ring, and they took simply from his wife. Don't you think, gentlemen, I mean, don't get me wrong, robbery is a robbery and crime is a crime. When two citizens sitting in their front porch, and when some individuals come in and attack them inside their house, when they are enjoying their privacy, don't you think those individuals, they terrorize this family, this veteran, who they didn't give him a mercy, and he kept telling them, I'm a veteran, please give me a break. They didn't give him a break. They robbed him blind, and that was so sad. But gentlemen, I want to mention something to you about terrorist sleeping cells. We do have, unfortunately, among us, some sleeping terrorist cells who they get their order from those international terrorists like ISIS or Al-Qaeda or the other people. They told them, you don't have to use even a bullet. You could use a butter knife from the kitchen. And when you stab someone on the street, you are a martyr. You are doing a good thing for your belief. And that's what I tried to bring this point, gentlemen. What happened in Europe, there's some of them, they drive a car and using a car as a weapon to kill as many people on the street. So I just want to bring it to you, gentlemen. The terrorists could come in so many faces. The evil has so many masks. So I would just love your comments again, and thank you, and God bless you.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, it's the odd part of many times the terrorists that the leadership that tells or preaches for their members to go out and perform these terrorist acts. Many times they don't get their hands dirty, and they're not willing to sacrifice their own lives. They somehow are preaching and completely distorting the Quran and other things and driving others to do it. But if you notice, the real leadership never actually says, well, I'll strap on any explosives onto me and I'll go out and I'll do it. No, they always sacrifice others in the name of it, which is, really unfortunate sometimes the way this has been set up. And
well, Mafia did it the same way, Bob. Yeah, the Mafia did it usually the same way. The big guy, he's just, he's just an honest, he's just an honest businessman in the vending machine business. He didn't shoot anybody. His hands are clean.
Yeah, and I understand, Jerry's frustration with it and things, but there is a real big distinction that's made between, political terrorists that are trying to change the political dynamics of our country by violence versus, crimes where people are just bad people. I mean, they do bad things.
I think we need to punish the violence and not the motive.
I don't know. I mean, I think when it's terrorism, that's the thing. Like that's why it's so different. But I think we've got to make the distinction between what is terrorism and what isn't, and just try and do that. But we've got enough laws in the books. We've got enough punishments out there. We've got enough people doing them. We should just punish people for what they've done and make those crimes and those laws fair and effective. And I don't think we've done a great job of that.
That's interesting. I think the caller, real quick, I think the caller is getting hung up on definition. Absolutely, those people were terrorized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's no
they're
question.
scared to death. Yeah.
Even kids who walk to school and are terrorized. Even if you're bullied in school, that can be terrorizing. I can't tell you how many poor families I've covered in my career where they were terrorized. A gang of people broke in their house and harassed them and stole their goods and stole their clothes, and that's terrorizing to those people. So, but it's not terrorism. So it's a definition issue. No one would argue they're not terrorized, and no one would argue, to use the verb, that the perpetrators weren't terrorizing those people. But that's not terrorism, and by the textbook definition, what constitutes terrorism.
George, it's nice to have a real reporter around. I mean, you get so accustomed to, the social media, the columnists, everybody's giving you opinions, haven't seen a fact in their lives, and you're like, oh, hey, here's my source. Here's where that information came from. If you wanted to check it, you could check it. But it's just refreshing. It's very uncommon these days.
Boy, George, you're not used to compliments.
I want you to write that down and send my editor a letter. I'm a real journalist, and I deserve a raise. No, thank you. I appreciate you.
I'm here for that. I mean, I think we'd live in a better country if we had real journalism. I mean, kids don't learn about journalism like I learned. We talked about what kids learn about in school. I learned about the difference between what objectivity was in school. People don't learn that. I don't want to say kids, but I feel like no one understands what objective journalism is, what facts are. It's like science. It's like, hey guys, there's a thing for this.
Yeah, it's crossed over. But actually, what we're going back to is what happened around the time that the country was formed. You had newspapers, and the newspapers were from a point of view. If they were a Federalist, they were strictly Federalist, and they were going to attack, Jefferson, forever, and the other ones that were going to attack Hamilton all the time. But you knew that, and that was their purpose of the newspaper. They weren't objective. And professionally, somehow the occupation or the profession was supposed to evolve to being objective. Now it looks like we're swinging back the other way, that opinion is mixing its way well into the articles that are supposed to be objective.
I think when you think about it, like I grew up in that comic book, like I love superheroes, and I think it was purposeful that Superman's secret identity, he was Clark Kent, he was a newspaper reporter, somebody that you would trust, somebody that was honest, somebody that was objective. And if you did that today, I don't think very many people... It'd be all
fake news.
Yeah, people wouldn't believe that. But, you remember Perry Mason saying, hey, these are facts.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Hunter bringing up facts when we got, on the other end, like you were saying, we got not only biased journalism, but we got now media suppression via contract when you have publications like the National Enquirer, where David Pecker goes and pays somebody for a story and actually makes them contractually silent and then buries it in his safe. I mean, that's especially kind of scary where you got this kind of contractual censorship.
And maybe we all grew up in a different era, except for Adam here.
I'm 32.
Yeah. and the National Enquirer was never...
It's a tabloid.
Yeah, it wasn't something that you looked at and said, oh, I'm going to believe this. It was something when you're in the checkout counter you look at and you sort of smile at.
Because you're trying to figure out what's going on in Area 51.
Yeah,
I feel about that. The National Enquirer
I think where they got some credibility was on the presidential candidate, what's his name, Edwards. And they were actually the first one that was saying that he was paying his girlfriend on the side and everything he has to do with campaign cash and things like that. And everybody was saying, oh, no, he wasn't doing that. He wasn't doing that. And it actually, factually, it was happening, which made it
they beat a lot of people on the OJ case, too, But I think 2 points real quick, Bob. The difference between now and back, and you're absolutely, that's a great point, that in the old days, even going back, 70, 80, 100 years, there was a definite political stance of the newspapers And, the free press was pro-slavery. Read some of those old free presses. They're shocking, some of the racism. But the difference, I think, is that back then they didn't make any bones about it. Now a lot of outlets that are pretending to be objective aren't. I would prefer if they would just go ahead and say, hey, we're this. Don't say this is an apple and this is a banana and pretend like you're objective and you're not. CNN is just as biased as Fox, maybe even more so. I can sit here and cite several instances of out-and-out lies that CNN has aired. I'll give you a quick example. You remember the Castile case in Milwaukee where it was Facebook Live where the cop shot him and fatally shooting? And CNN, the sister had a rally after that, and CNN runs a story that says, victim's sister calls for peace, okay? And they showed her saying, don't burn our neighborhood down. They cut the film at that point. And CNN ran a story that said that she was calling for peace. Her very next sentence was, go out to the suburbs and burn their ass down. Burn their, poop down. So it was, you can't make the argument that they didn't hear it. It was in her very next sentence. So she wasn't calling. Now think about this. If you live in a suburb of Milwaukee and you're watching CNN, they may be putting your life in danger because this woman is calling for people to riot and burn down your neighborhood. CNN made the willful decision to omit that, and not only just omit it, but do the George Orwell thing and say she was calling for peace when, in fact, she was calling for a riot. And there's dozens of media, and as a person who, I'm in the media, I'm not going to defend that. I'm gonna call it out because I think that journalism can still be a very honorable profession when it's done right, and it bothers me to see what some outlets do. I mean, I'm going to put in a plug for my paper. We present both sides.
Sure, are you at the Detroit News? Is that where you're at?
Yeah, Detroit News, DetroitNews.com. I am saying that we present both sides. I can give you another local example. When the Chaldean community was being deported, you remember that about a year ago?
Yeah.
Every outlet wrote stories about the effect on the families, which is a legitimate story to look at. But nobody looked at what the crime, these guys were all convicted. As it turns out, I looked into it, I pat myself on the back, but the fact, and many of these people that were being deported were part of the Chaldean Mafia, including Luis Aquari, who was the head of the notorious Aquari Colasso drug. They were murderous. They were the Chaldean Mafia. And that didn't get mentioned. I did after I wrote my story. And again, I don't want to pat myself on the back. The point is that issue was only being looked at one way. And the one way they were looking at it was how this was going to affect the families, which is a legitimate issue to cover, don't get me wrong. But shouldn't you also look, well, they're being deported because they committed crimes. Shouldn't you look what crime they committed? Isn't that worthy of at least a mention in the story? And, it was right there. The guy was the head of this big murderous and some whispers are that he got deported because, he used to thumb his nose. I don't know, Bob, you might remember this guy. He would thumb his nose at the cops, and you can't catch me kind of thing. So some say that was actually a retaliation against him to get him out of the country. Who knows? But, just call it. That's interesting. You're biased.
Well, we got a couple callers on this. Tony, you're on with Bob Ficano on the panel, and George Hunter.
Yes. How y'all doing this morning, gentlemen? I got a call before, and he tried to defend white terrorists. Tell them we don't need that because that's what they should have been labeled white terrorists. White privilege. Look here, I want to ask y'all a question right here. If a black man go to Macomb County and goes to a store and snatch a white woman's purse, and he have her on camera. Okay, he snatched a white woman's purse and run, and they catch this guy a week later. What do you think Macomb County police would do? What would happen to the guy most likely in the normal scenario? What would happen?
You get arrested?
Yeah, he should get arrested. Okay, well, my stepdaughter was cashing a check at the club on 30 miles. These two white guys grabbed her purse at the check cash and they were $5 and ran with the money. They got him on camera. She made a police report. The police came. A week later, the guys come back up to the market again. He hangs around there. Employees call the police and have him arrested. Guess what they do? Police come there and don't arrest him, tell him he's not allowed back at the contact us no more. You see the race system going on there? And what good is the officer to have cameras on if they can't turn the camera on? Listen, this is what I'm going to tell you right now. And I'm going to tell you real fast before I hand this mama. I promise you that 90% of these white officers on the force are not there trying to protect anything. Well, I put it back. They bring the law back. You got to be a resident to be on the police force. I promise you, 60% of the white officers will resign from the thing. The black people life like a video game to them. Chasing them, you can't get officer. They sitting on every corner ticket in your car, but you can't get an officer to call if someone breaking your home. Come on, man. See, the Chief Craig, the worst chief we ever had. She'll be the hell off this force. What I'm doing is, we doing this campaigning. We're doing videos now. We're doing it for the whole year to prove the racism. We Rose Point, we film them, showing how they profiling blacks. Well, we're going to put this on international style of movement to go social media to viral. The warning about the traps on Mac and Warren and Groves Point. I'm going to prove to y'all why they stalking only black people.
We have a police commissioner here. I just wanted to say that, Chief Craig is doing a great job, as far as growing the Detroit Police Department. We're bringing on 30 new. We bringing on 30 new officers per month. It was Chief Craig, the one who have improved police morale. With the morale used to be prior to Chief Craig. We got the best chief right now that any city can have. Look what's going on right now in Chicago. But to answer but you're talking about also about if your house is broken into, police don't respond. We actually have a police non-emergency number. So, it's not you call 911 after the fact. So it's not a 911 call. It's no longer emergency. So the number that we have put in place is 313-267-4600. And that is the police department's non-emergency number.